Hey guys, Dan here with Dan Reviews It, your movie reviews for this week. We're not doing the daily quarantine videos anymore. Quarantine, for the most part, is sort of lifted. I know I'm getting out a bit more and working my part-time job again, so not every day is going to be a new video, but I do want to still put up like 3 or 4 videos a week, and I want one of those at least every other week, maybe, to be about new movies. I had stopped the movie reviews for a while because I wasn't getting out to the theater to see brand new releases, but with the pandemic and the quarantine and Hollywood being shut down, movies are sort of showing up just on demand and on the streaming sites, so we're just going to focus on those for a little bit, I guess until theaters open. And this week we have 4 from Netflix. They're all sort of in the romance category. 3 romantic comedies and then 1 romantic drama. And they all come from Netflix. They're all from 2020. They're all not brand new, but the first one up sort of inspired me to have a themed Netflix show on some of the recent romance movies, and that is The Wrong Missy. This is a very popular movie on Netflix. It was #1 for a little bit in their daily rankings. It comes from Happy Madison, the Adam Sandler folks, so makes sense this would be a very high-profile entry. Sandler himself is not in it, but his good buddy David Spade is, and Netflix dropped it right around the time they put Uncut Gems from Adam Sandler on. And as well, Just Go With It with him and Jennifer Aniston. So for like 1 or 2 days, Adam Sandler had the top 3 things on Netflix, which I don't think has ever happened before since they started doing the metrics. So anyway, this is David Spade, who, you know, usually I like. He's kind of corny, but he's funny. You know, I always liked his TV show Just Shoot Me, and of course I thought he did some good characters back in the SNL days, and even more recently, like some of his other projects like the David Spade Lights Out show was okay. But here he is paired with Lauren Lapkus, who is an up-and-coming comedian. I just recently saw her on the Who Wants to Be a Millionaire revival with Jimmy Kimmel. They were doing like the celebrity version, so Lauren Lapkus was on there. But she's been on a bunch of different shows and movies. I'm not sure what you would know her the most from. If you know her at all. I mean, it says she played Susan Fisher in Orange is the New Black. I barely remember that, and I saw all the seasons of that show. She plays on the HBO series Crashing, if you've seen that. I have not, but I've seen her pop up on like Big Bang Theory. She was in Jurassic World, so she shows up, and she is definitely, I would say, up and coming. And this is her most high-profile role yet, because she really is, I would say, probably the star of the movie. I mean, David Spade is obviously first billed, but I would say she's probably the star. It's all about her anyway. So the main plot is that the David Spade character Tim goes on this blind date with this girl, Missy, who is very weird and turns Tim off right away. He's like, forget this. 3 months later, Tim is out and about at an airport and meets another woman named Missy, and they end up having a great night together and exchanging numbers, and Missy texts him, so they start a little rapport over the text. Tim invites her to this business retreat in Hawaii, and oh my god, wait, it wasn't the Missy that he wanted from the airport, it was the wrong Missy. It was Lauren Lapkus' character. So she's now on this retreat with him, and everything is going haywire. He has really talked this hot babe up, and she shows up, and not that Lauren Lapkus is ugly, but they ugg her up a little bit for this role and make her really kind of out there and weird, and so David Spade is kind of embarrassed about her, or the Tim character I should say, and so his boss, who basically hates him, kind of takes a shining to the Missy character, as she's an expert in relationships, and she's an expert in CPR, and she's an expert in all these different things, and so it goes from there. We don't really do spoilers, so I didn't need to get into the whole plot, but that's about half the movie right there. Some of my lesser favorite people are in this movie. Rob Schneider, who I haven't thought was funny since probably the days of SNL when he would do the Rich Meister character, making copies. Like, that's probably about the last time I thought Rob Schneider was funny. And then Nick Swardson, I've really never thought was funny. He played on Grandma's Boy. He played in Bucky Larson, Born to be a Star. He's a Happy Madison regular. He's in a lot of the Sandler movies, and he just is not even remotely funny. So right there, this movie has two strikes against it. Two, I wouldn't say lead characters, but main characters. Swartzen, I think, more so than Schneider, that just are not funny. They're simply not funny. I think Adam Sandler has a lot of funny friends. I think Chris Rock is very funny. I think Kevin James can be funny. But Schneider and Swartzen are two of my least favorites, so that's always a strike. I think Spade can be funny also, but here, not only is he not funny, but his character sucks. He's a miserable character. And it just doesn't seem like he's even trying in this movie. And again, normally I like David Spade, so it's sort of weird to me that he's just not even giving it a go, really, with this character. Whereas, on the flip side, Lapkus is just giving it her all. I mean, she is, falling down. She's doing, bits. She's getting thrown overboard on the boat. She's really, doing some good physical comedy here. And I would say she gets the only laughs, even remotely, in this movie. And there aren't many to be had. But any that there are, I think she gets, and she earns, So, boy, it's a bad movie. I have to say that. But I don't think it's an F. And I really, really thought this one out. I wavered on this. Because I think it's at least got value because of Lauren Lapkus. I think she is funny in this movie. And her relationship, or friendship, I should say, with the boss character is funny too. Mr. Winstone, who is portrayed by Jeff Pearson, who, he's like a character actor that as sort of like a stoic dude. Maybe you have seen him in 24 or Designated Survivor. He has that very, like, authoritative role. And there's a couple other people that I enjoy that are in this movie, like Sarah Chalke is in it. Her character doesn't really do much, but there you go. And Bobby Lee is in it. We just recently talked about him. And how I don't think he's very funny. He's not in it that much, though. He's very, very, very minor. But I don't know if I ever really laughed at this movie. But I will say, unlike some F comedies that I've had over the last 10 years or so, and there certainly have been several, I think this movie at least has Lauren Lapkus going for it and really just giving it her all to make you hate this character yet feel some sympathy for her. Every beat is, well established ahead of the curve. It's all very generic. But I'm not going to fail this movie. Lauren Lapkus gives a very solid comedic performance even when the material was constantly letting her down. So I leave The Wrong Missy with a D. So up next, I would say other pretty high profile rom-com this year on Netflix has been a sequel. It's To All the Boys, P.S. I Still Love You. This is a sequel to the movie To All the Boys, or what was it called? To All the Boys I've Loved Before. That's what it was. And that was in 2018, which I wasn't really doing like grades on videos at that point. But I still wrote them down and had them. And I gave that movie a B+. I found that to be really enjoyable. This was the sequel. And both are based on a book. So there was actually a sequel to the original book, too. And they're all mainly named the same thing. The book here is just called P.S. I Still Love You. And there's actually a third movie that's going to be, I guess, in 2021, maybe? It's called To All the Boys, Always and Forever. And that's in post-production right now. So I would assume that's going to premiere probably in 2021 on Netflix. But we have Lana Condor back as the lead character, Lara Jean, I guess. And in the first movie, she basically wrote these love letters to all these boys that she had crushes on, and one of them, played by Noah Centineo, hot flavor of the month on Netflix. He had like 2 movies that premiered within a couple weeks of each other, and he was just getting off of the Fosters TV show that had just wrapped up. So, hot commodity there. Hasn't really done much since those movies, but here he is back again in this one, playing the same character, Peter. And they are dating now. They, at the end of the first movie, got together, and so now they are going strong and are a year or maybe even 2 older in school. But basically, they have to do some volunteer work for, graduation, I guess, and she volunteers at this, old folks' home, and discovers that one of the other boys she wrote a note to, who actually wrote her back, named, what was his name? Names are hard for me. I always have to look them up. John Ambrose McLaren, and she says his full name almost every time. But John Ambrose, she talks about a lot. She had a crush on him back in middle school in 6th grade, so he wasn't even like a thought in her mind at that point. But it turns out he is doing the same volunteer work that she is, and she also, got this letter back from him saying like, oh, I'm so flattered by your letter, this and that. So now she's got a little bit of a conundrum. And sort of a love triangle. She's kind of keeping it from Peter that he's even there. Meanwhile, trying to keep that together while kind of finagling with this John Ambrose person. But also Peter's ex is still sort of in the mix, not with him, and they don't really even like each other. But, they all did this like time capsule project a couple years ago, and they want to kind of go back to that, mainly because she wants to have a reason to reintroduce John Ambrose into the picture organically, and so Peter's ex-girlfriend comes along for that. Anyway, things happen, and it's a romantic comedy. Holland Taylor has a great supporting role as the kind of hot chickie at the old folks' home. She's not really running anything, but she knows what's up, and she is kind of like the tour guide, on the real deal with the old folks home. So great performance there. Look, I really like these movies. I think they are cute. I think whenever there's a real good high school movie out there in the sort of romance, dramedy department, you definitely tend to compare it, at least I do, I think many do, to John Hughes. Oh, that's very Hughesian. And, I've said that so many times in the last 5, 6, 7 years, Edge of 17, Perks of Being a Wallflower. There's a lot of good examples of really good high school movies. And what I mean when I say something is Hughesian is that it is written well from the perspective of teenagers. That was the first time I think people ever really saw that in movies were with John Hughes films. Kids really talked, or teenagers, I should say, really talked the way teenagers talked. They were frank, they were bold, they were, sex-driven, they were a little dirty, but they also had, an F authority mentality and this and that. And I would say that these movies don't quite get that deep, neither one really, but the way that the emotions are conveyed, in especially the second movie, like the first movie was more about, I would say, the plot and getting to know these characters and sort of setting the stage. The second movie, because we already know the characters, dives in emotionally, like pretty much right away, and it really hits a lot of good emotional beats for these characters. For really, I would say the 2 main characters. John Ambrose is sort of an outsider. I mean, he's part of the storyline and the love triangle, but because we didn't know him from the first movie, there's not a huge attachment to him yet. So you're really like rooting for her and Peter to make it. So, there's a little bit of, okay, we've seen this 100 times before, sort of nature to this. But of the 4 movies we're reviewing this week, I certainly laughed the most at this. In fact, at one point I was like howling. And it was kind of silly. It was a pratfall scene, but Condor, right, is her name. She is really, really a good actress. She's funny. She's very adept. Yeah, Lana Condor is the actress, and she is very adept at this role. I want to see her in more things. I don't know if I've seen her in anything else. She was in X-Men Apocalypse, which I hated. Okay, she had a role in Alita Battle Angel, which I enjoyed that. She wasn't the star of it, though, so I don't really remember. And then I don't think I've seen anything else she's been in. Yeah, but anyway. Oh, well, she has a voice role in BoJack Horseman, but I don't watch that. And I wouldn't really recognize her from that anyway if it's a voice role. But she's very, very funny. I'm excited to see more from her outside of this series. And sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. Molly Ringwald, was great under the thumb of John Hughes, but once she got out into some other movies, didn't quite fare so well. And she's done okay as an adult actress as well, showing up on Riverdale and The Secret Life of the American Teenager. But, for Condor, it may be more of the same. I mean, now, she's had different directors for each of the two films, but, maybe she's at home with this character. I don't know, where she goes from here. But I would like to see more, because I think she's very talented, at least in these two films. And, again, this is probably, a little generic, but, Holland Taylor is very funny in it, and I love to see her in everything, especially except for 2.5 Men, because that show stinks, but she was always kind of a bright spot in it. But the emotional heft of this movie, and it's not very dramatic, but it just goes through a lot of feelings that somebody in these situations would definitely be feeling. And it reminded me in that respect of, like, some of the better aspects emotionally of Daria or My So-Called Life. Some of these, real good kind of touchstones for teenage emotional nature. So I give this one just slightly less than the first one. I give P.S. To All the Boys, P.S. I Still Love You. I give it a B. So the third one in line is going to be another romantic comedy. This is Love, Wedding, Repeat. And this is starring Sam Claflin from, I know him mainly from The Hunger Games, but he's done some other things. He was also in that movie, Me Before You. And then Olivia Munn is sort of his love interest in this, named Dina. And it's Jack and Dina, and it's Jack's sister's wedding. He meets this Dina girl 3 years before at a different function. They kind of fall for each other just in that moment, but he gets dragged away by his friend. Hey, we got a plane to catch, let's get out of here. And, never the two shall meet again until his sister's wedding, and the Dina character is there as well. But oh no, she is, they're both at the same table, but she's sitting with this other guy who is just super annoying. And who is he played by? I don't know. Most of these people I don't know. It's a British movie, so a lot of them are Brits, except for really Olivia Munn. Although Frida Pinto is in it from Slumdog Millionaire. I always love her popping up. But essentially, this movie has sort of two interesting things about it, I guess. First of all, there is a voiceover person, a narrator, and it's supposed to sound like Judi Dench, and it did. It literally fooled me. Like, I was like, wait a second, is that Judi Dench? I had to look it up, and it's not. It's a sound-alike. So I was kind of annoyed about that. Because they just make you think it's Judi Dench. But then, number two, everybody in this movie pretty much is unlikable. The Claflin character is okay. I would say the Dina is the best, the Olivia Munn character. She's probably the most well-received, I think, and the most, quote-unquote normal. But what this movie does very oddly, and this is why it's called Love, Wedding, Repeat, halfway through the movie, they reset everything, sort of sliding doors style. And the fake Judi Dench comes on and says, well, what if these people didn't sit in this particular order at the table? What if they sat in this order? And then we see everything go again from the jump of sitting it down at the table at the reception. The problem is, you already hate everybody so much by that point, because everybody was unlikable in the first setup, that you're just like, well, now I don't really care what turns out. And, okay, in version 2, things go a little bit differently. Certain people are nicer, certain people have different goals or motivations, and certain things end up differently. Unlike Sliding Doors, where, however many things she does, everything always turns out the exact same. That's not the case here. So it's not exactly like Sliding Doors in that respect. But by the halfway point when they reset it, I just was like, well, I don't really like any of these people. I don't want to spend another 45 minutes with them with a different example of how things could have been. I can't say that was all that good. Some people are definitely more likable, like I said, but you still have that image of them in the other scenes, like being a jerk off. So for me, it didn't really work. Olivia Munn was great to see, though. I have not seen her in anything in quite a little bit. I know she did a movie recently where I know she like bitched about she was having like it was like a Me Too thing. It was like she was either being sexually harassed. I don't remember. Well, she was in X-Men Apocalypse. Boy, everybody today is from an X-Men movie. Well, I don't know what it was, but anyway, I mean, I know her most from Magic Mike because I see Magic Mike literally like 6 or 7 times. Yeah, I mean, Office Christmas Party maybe was the last thing I really saw her in, I guess. That movie was like okay, but I find her very likable. I mean, I think she sort of plays typically the same role a lot of the time, sort of that sarcastic, type of person, like a female Jason Bateman almost. But it works on her, and I think I would say the only times I really got some laughs in this movie was at, lines her character was doling out. So, it's very generic, and it made me think a lot of that movie Table 19, which also wasn't that good, but it was definitely better than this. It was a slightly different concept, but it was all the singles table, and it was like, I know Anna Kendrick was one of them, and, what's her name? June Squibb was one of them. Tony Revolori was one of them. So, everybody kind of came together from that, and then they bonded over the course of the reception and kind of, went off and did their own thing. And it was like, okay. I think I gave it maybe a C+. But this reminded me of that in the sense that, like, almost the whole movie takes place at the wedding reception, and we're just getting to know these characters and their quirks and all of that. And I just wish they wrote more likable characters. So I leave Love, Wedding, Repeat with a C-. And then finally, we're going to talk about a romantic drama called All the Bright Places, and this is based on a novel. It's called the same thing. And Elle Fanning is the lead. Justice Smith, though, is the other one. It's sort of a two-hander, I guess you could say. Justice Smith from the old Pokemon Detective Pikachu movie. And essentially, this movie is a lot about mental health, suicide issues. Elle Fanning plays Violet, and she loses her sister pretty early on in the movie. And is going through a lot of stuff, and then we meet Justice Smith as Theodore. He's also got a lot of demons of his own, which we don't really learn about until, I would say, more than halfway through the movie. I think we're probably getting to the, like, 2/3 mark before we really learn what's going on. We briefly see his sister, played by Alexandra Shipp, who I love from Love, Simon. So she's always got my heart from there. And she's okay, but she's only in a few scenes, really. And essentially, Theodore is trying to get Violet kind of out of her shell, out of her funk. One thing is she won't even ride in a car. Because, a car crash is what killed her sister. So she's, sort of anxiety-ridden from that. And so he's, trying to kind of worm his way into her heart in that respect. And her parents, who are Luke Wilson, and I'm not sure who the gal is that plays the mother. But, they're sort of are taking a shining to the Theodore character. They like that he's, seems to be really looking out for Violet and everything. You also have Keegan-Michael Key as Theodore's guidance counselor, who really is kind of at his wit's end with Theodore, being kind of a bad kid, being destructive. And so it seems like a good outlet for both of them to sort of connect in that way. But that's all I'll say. This definitely has some spoiler material ahead. It's a heavy movie. It's light in a couple of places in the sense that like these two are teens and they're trying to kind of flirt with each other a little bit, so it's light in those moments. But make no mistake, this is definitely a drama as far as the romantic movies goes. It's not a rom-com at all, especially compared to these other movies. My biggest issue with this movie is actually the handling of mental health issues, issues of suicide, issues of depression. It's not enough to completely, give it a negative grade, but I'm definitely like kind of on the border with this movie. I feel like the first season of 13 Reasons Why dealt with Hannah's suicide in very, very, graphic detail, but it made it, I think, real for people, and obviously they had a bunch of disclaimers. This movie has a disclaimer too at the end, saying basically like, if you're dealing with any of the things you've seen in this movie, you can call this number or reach out for help or whatever. But I think by that point it's sort of gone too far off the rails in the handling of mental health. Look, it's a very delicate subject, and they're certainly not making fun of it, but maybe making light of it a little bit, maybe wrapping things up a little quickly in some aspects. So I don't know. This one is a tough one for me. I'm definitely sort of right on the border there, but the performances are great. I mean, Justice Smith, I'm really starting to like. I think Pokemon's the first time I ever really saw him, but I know he was in the news last week or something for sort of coming out as bi or pansexual or something. It's Pride Month, so I guess celebrities feel like they can do that with less damage to their career. I don't know. I mean, maybe in this day and age there is no damage to the career anymore. There's so many, young hot actors and actresses in their teens and 20s that just are all over that. I know the gal that plays Betty on Riverdale just recently came out as pansexual too. So, but anyway, I don't think it's a career ender like it was, say, when Ellen did it 25 years ago. But either way, regardless of that, I mean, he seems like a cool dude, but I liked his performance in Pokemon, even though Pokemon was sort of a subpar movie, but I like his performance here too. And Elle Fanning, she really is becoming one of my favorite up-and-coming young actresses. I mean, she's not really even that young anymore. I mean, I first saw her in Super 8, which was 10 years ago, so she's certainly, I mean, she's playing high school in this movie, but she's got to be in her 20s, I would think. Probably maybe mid-20s. But either way, this is a real tough call for me, but just slightly skates by with a positive. I give this one a B-. It's enjoyable, but definitely, if you have some mental health issues, if you have some depression, I would recommend not watching this alone. I think you should watch it with somebody because it may trigger you with some things. I don't know. The handling was not my favorite. I'm not going to give it a negative grade for that, but it really is just skating by with all the bright places and a B-. So that's going to do it for this week. I know tomorrow actually they're premiering the King of the what is that thing called? The King of Long Island, right? Something. The new Judd Apatow movie with Pete Davidson that's been all over my Hulu ads for, Staten Island. I think that's what it is, The King of Staten Island. They've been advertising that on Hulu for the next, last month or so. It's going to be on Amazon Prime and other streaming outlets to stream tomorrow, so I'm definitely going to tackle that in my next movie review. I'll see what else is out there. Usually there's at least one or two sort of under-the-radar movies that maybe wouldn't have gone to theaters anyway, or maybe would have gone to just indie theaters or whatever. But that's certainly the highest profile one I can think of right now. But yeah, that'll be for my next movie review. I have TV reviews coming up. That'll be, I guess, my next video. And then we've got Dan Does Disney for So Dear to My Heart. That will be coming next week. And I think I'm going to sit down with Joe actually in person, since quarantine is sort of being lifted here, and start the Freaks and Geeks reviews, Freaks and Geeks Friday. So that will be coming hopefully next week too. So thanks so much for watching, and we'll see you back here next time. Bye.